boss didn't help me when I needed it, so I did the same when he asked me for help. Reposting this as it was removed from r/ProRevenge, which is understandable. Smile. So this happened in my old job during the pandemic. I worked as a travel advisor in a luxury travel agency in France. During this period, no business was coming in and the French government stepped in to cover our salaries while staying at home. This government covers 70% of our salary and the remaining 30% has to be covered by our employer. This means that we're only allowed to work 30% of our original hours with our company, and that equates to less than 10 hours of work per week. Since there was no business coming in, and since the bulk of my income was commissioned from sale of travel packages which was not coming in, I had run into a small financial dilemma and needed a bit of funds to cover my rent for a month. So I reached out to my boss to ask for a salary advance which is to be deducted from my paycheck at the end of the month. By the way, for context, it is an employee's legal right in France to have a salary advance if needed for as long as the amount of the advance is covered in full by your end of the month's pay check. My boss told me that it is not possible and messaged me the following text: "If you have personal financial problems, you should check with your banker." I was flabbergasted by his response, especially because I was his top seller and brought in 1.4 million euros in revenue the year before the pandemic. Even though I knew he was a D***ck, I never imagined he would refuse my access to this right of mine as an employee. I could have sent him a formal letter of demand by mail to force him to give me an advance as provided by the labor laws, but I decided not to as I was able to borrow money from a friend. Weeks gone by after the incident and business hasn't improved. The company's funds are dwindling since no income was coming in. To help French companies, the government decided to give them an option to decrease the vacation leaves of their employees by somehow allowing them to impose a vacation times even when the employees are not working anyway on those days. If I could remember correctly, it was 3 days that they can fully impose, without objection from the employee, and 4 days extra with the consent of the employee. All of my colleagues agreed to give their vacation time except for me and another disgruntled county worker. Since we still haven't given our consent, and the end of this government is nearing, he messaged me and the other employees stating that we are the only people who haven't agreed. He is saying that should help the company as it is going through financial problems due to the pandemic and that it would be really nice of us to give him our consent. Upon receipt of the message, I promptly responded with the following text: "I am really sorry to Hearthat the company is going through some financial problems, but let me remind you of the advice you gave me when I asked for your help a couple weeks back. If you have financial problems, I suggest you talk to your banker. And that means I am not going to give you my vacation leave." I had to guts to be up front because I know that he can never fire me due to my performance and very strong French labor laws, and I was also planning to leave soon anyway. I wished I was in front of him when I told him that. Knowing him, I'm pretty sure he went all red and mad when he read that message. And his forehead veins should be visibly throbbing like whenever he's mad at someone. He was too shook that the only response he gave me was, "Okay." I was extremely satisfied with my comeback that had a smile on my face the entire week. Revenge can really be satisfying. I left a landlord and property management company with a loss because they tried to nickel and dime me. I know the title is bad, but hear me out. This happened a while ago after I relocated to a new city. I signed a new 1-year lease for a townhouse in the downtown core and really enjoyed where I lived. The townhouse was okay, but a little less nice than I anticipated during my showing. Caveat emptor, I suppose. The only other relevant background is the lease said the security deposit would be used for the last month's rent and would not be held as a damage deposit. The year passed with very few problems. The water heater went out in the dead of winter, but I stayed in a hotel for 3 nights and offset that cost against the rent after verbally agreeing with the landlord to do so. At the end of the year, the landlord asked if I wanted to renew. I said yes. Was presented with a 1-year extension for the same rent. I signed it and sent it back. I waited about 2 weeks and hadn't received the landlord's signed version back, so I inquired with the management company. They said the landlord was mad because they didn't get rent on the first of the month most of the time. I asked what they were talking about because I always paid on or ahead of time, and they said that while I paid the management company on time, as required by the lease, the management company hadn't gotten it into landlord's hands in time. I said that wasn't my problem per the lease, but the management company requested $100 more per month on the extension to make up for the inconvenience. They said they would send me a new lease reflect $100 increase, which they did. I immediately went out and found a condo in a similarly ideal location which was much nicer rented for $75 a month less than my existing rent. I went through the background check with them and they sent me a lease to sign. Before signing the new lease, I sent a certified letter to landlord and THE management company of the old location saying, my previous signature on the new lease, which had not yet been countersigned, was revoked and ineffective because of their counteroffer and no longer capable of acceptance. I then signed the new lease. At that point, I had about 10 days left on the existing lease. The management company and landlord called me freaking out because they wouldn't be able to find a new tenant in time and would lose revenue. I said not my problem, hired a moving company, cleaned up the old place and returned it to them in the same condition I received it.
I despise people who speed through school zones. So I got revenge. As a kid, I can't tell you how many times I was nearly hit by a car speeding through a school zone. Although it may have been because of personal incompetence on my end, I still saw no reason why people sped through school zones. So I called then an emergency police line and reported that people were repeatedly speeding around my elementary school. Keep in mind, I was in 5th grade. Time. That very next week, there was not one, but 3 cars pulled over for speeding through. Needless to say, my plan had worked. Oh, but this wasn't the only act of PettyRevenge committed. Now I'm an adult. When I go to pick up my girlfriend, I pass by a busy elementary school that always has the sidewalk packed with kids and their parents. Speed limit is normally 35 miles per hour, but with the school zone it's 25 miles per hour. I've witnessed people going upwards of 45 to 55 miles per hour through there. Don't get me wrong, I drive fast too. I'm a huge car guy, so speed and horsepower are kinda my thing, but I refuse to speed through school zones. So what I've started doing is purposefully inconveniencing speeders. I'll slow my happy ass down to 15 miles per hour if I see someone speeding. Yesterday, for example, I was passing by the school zone, during that school's dismissal, and doing 25 miles per hour like a good citizen I am. I see a very nice Corvette Z06 doing about 40 miles per hour behind me. They started tailgating me, so in spite, I slowed down to 15 miles per hour. I even stayed that speed past the school zone, and when I took my turn off the street, I was extraordinarily slow about it. I turned on my blinker, and about a block away from my turn, I started slowly applying the brake, going slower and slower and slower. He was continually flashing his headlights, honking his horn, etc. And I just sat there with a huge smile on my face. I heard him speed off, and the only feeling I felt was pure joy and happiness. My employer tried to steal $38 from me, so I made them pay $5. Back in 1998, I moved from Michigan to Virginia and took a job as an irrigation tech for a large regional landscape company. Within 6 months, I learned my mistake, as working as an irrigation tech for landscapers suck. You are treated as a necessary evil and always get the hitty end of the stick. I had heard through the grapevine that some area managers had screwed up a couple big maintenance contracts and that somehow they were going to try and make me the scapegoat. So I promptly went to the second contractor I had interviewed for originally and got a job there and put in a 1-week notice. My manager was really pressuring me to give them more notice until I told him that if he asked me one more time for more notice that he would notice the following morning that I didn't work there anymore. So at the end of the week I turned in my uniforms plus my reimbursement slip for $38 petty cash. I was told that I was getting nothing back on my uniforms and they weren't going to pay my $38. I was pissed but just moved on. The following week I contacted my local labor board and filed a complaint saying that the entire time I had worked for them I was being paid salary while I was a non-exempt employee. I asked to be paid all of my overtime. A few weeks go by and it works its way through the system and I get a call from the corporation's controller. We have a meeting and go over everything with a bunch of back and forth, and he was trying to justify that I was really exempt and they didn't owe me anything until I really had enough of his hit. I straight up that we might disagree on how much they owe me, but I'll guarantee they owe me something. On top of that, I would make a point on every payday going from branch to branch of the company with a sign standing outside the gate telling every single non-exempt employee that they were crewing out of overtime how they could sue the company. He ended up signing an NDA and got a check for $5,000 the following day. Within 2 months, that company and several others in the area began paying what they call Chinese overtime. They take your weekly salary and divide it by 40 for an hourly rate, and for every hour of overtime you work, you got half your rate. If you work your way through the math and whatnot and how the labor board determines your overtime in this case, it pretty much worked out correctly. So in summary, my employer tried to screw me out of $38 and I made them pay me $5. Update. I wanted to add a few things due to some of the comments. First off, if you don't like how I wrote it, then don't read it. I dictated this via voice to text sitting on a balcony overlooking a microbrewery at my brother-in-law's birthday party. There were also some questions about violating the NDA. What I signed was a statement that I wasn't going to share the info on overtime with other employees. There were no penalties written into the statement, and I don't even believe it was notarized. This company has long since been sold out to a national competitor.